Welcome to a Leading Conversations Classic podcast. We've searched through our early episodes to find some of the best just for you. If you've been with us from the beginning, you may have heard some of these. If you haven't, enjoy this classic episode. Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Welcome to another Leading Conversations podcast. Today we are so excited to have the great Tom Mercer with us. Tom, thanks for being here.
The average Tom Mercer is very happy to be with you. So thanks for the nice comment there, JD.
You are well above average. Are you in Victorville as we speak?
I'm not. I'm just 17 miles away from the Victorville campus of High Desert Church. Is where we live. Little outside of town.
What's the town called? What's the exact?
Oak Hills.
Oak Hills?
Yeah, right at the top of the Cajon Pass.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it.
It is cool. It's cooler than Victorville here. We have a little higher elevation than Victorville.
Oh, wow. What's the elevation?
About 4,000 feet.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being with us.
It's snowing outside, JD, as we speak. Just kidding.
You're kidding.
Totally.
You get snow, right?
We do, yeah. But and sometimes it'll last a day or two, but generally we'll get snow and it'll be gone within a few hours after the snowfall. But anyway.
So you get snow and then you get in the car to drive a couple hours and you're at the beach. That's
true. Yeah.
Well, hey, tell us your story. Tell us growing up, how you came to Christ, all of that.
Well, I was born into a ministry family. My dad was called to ministry as a young man. He was a basketball player and a basketball coach. And the Lord led him to Biola College, then Biola College. And he and my mom just raised me and my sister very well with a lot of love and a love for Jesus. I received Christ at the age of 7. It's kind of a weird story. My dad was an associate pastor at the church we attended at the time, so he wasn't the teacher on the weekends, and it was a traditional Sunday night service that the pastor, never forget his name, Joe Hemphill at St. Gabriel Union Church, was preaching on hell. And I, for whatever reason, at the age of 7, generally didn't listen, but for some reason I listened as the Spirit of God began to open up my heart to the recognition that Jesus was the Savior of the world. And boy, hell was something that Pastor Joe brought really alive that night, and it kind of scared me. Kind of an understatement. It terrified me, and so I remember this. I remember just leaning into my mom that evening and saying, I want to accept Jesus into my heart. And so the next morning, my dad and I got up, and he, wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing. And so I prayed to receive Christ, April 7th, 1962. And and so I grew up in a ministry family, got to have a front row seat to watch what ministry was all about.
Well, if you grew up in a ministry family, tell us one or two things your parents did well. A lot of ministry families listen to this podcast. Any tips you have, anything that you can say, hey, my folks really did a great job on this?
Yeah, my folks prioritized my sister and I and our lives and our interests. I remember I was a kid who enjoyed playing basketball. I was a couple of years younger than the kids in my grade, and so I was underdeveloped for that game at every level. So I never had any success. I mean, my talent level was probably not going to give me great success anyway, but But the point is, in high school, on all these teams, these basketball teams I played on, I never played. I mean, hardly ever got in a game. I went to college when I was 16, so I was starting high school at 12. And, I just wasn't physically able to compete. The older I got, everybody else was growing and developing also. So all through my basketball career, I sat on the pine, but my dad never missed a game. Always encouraged me. He was a basketball guy. He was a very successful basketball player in his day. And so it would have been easy for him to have been disappointed in the lack of performance of his only son, but he never did. He just loved me, always showed up. My mom didn't work outside the home, which I always appreciated. I know everybody is not capable of managing that, but whenever possible, I think it can make a huge difference in the lives of children. Just knowing where mom was and knowing that mom was always accessible. In my mind, I just had a visual image every day when I went to school where my mom was, and that brought me great security. And I grew up with great parents, loved my sis and I, and didn't do everything perfectly any more than Cheryl and I have done perfectly in raising our three, but they did a pretty good job.
Did you skip a grade or two?
Yeah. Well, when I started, I was a little early getting in anyway, and then I skipped a grade in elementary school. I was on some kind of a test program they had to accelerate some kids through the system, and so yeah, the short answer is yes.
Yeah, I tried to skip like 8 of them, but they kept sending me back.
Yeah, skipping a grade is different than skipping school, JD. So, that's a strategy that probably won't pay off for you.
I will say my dad skipped a grade, and he really did not like the fact that he didn't develop. He's a football guy, and he didn't grow till his senior year in high school. So he did not let us kids do that. Not that that was on the docket, but so you grew up, Christian family. How did ministry come into your life?
It's funny. I was, even at a fairly early age, I was involved with a youth group and different ministry opportunities with them. And I had several, pretty good guys kind of pull me aside and say, the Lord may have a call on your life for ministry. And so in the back of my mind, I always kind of felt like that was the trajectory I was on to become a pastor like my dad. But then I was I went to Biola, and I graduated from Biola and attended Talbot. I was in my 3rd semester of seminary in the MDiv program there, and I just loved it. I was enjoying school very much, but the church where my dad was a pastor, I felt, and I'm no one's judge, but at that point in my life, I felt like I was adequate to judge. And so I saw the way my dad was treated by people in leadership who had benefited so much from my dad's ministry. My dad had, done a great. My dad was the consummate shepherd when it came to being a pastor, and so they had benefited. Their kids had benefited from his mentorship and his counsel. And then I don't know how, even my memory is not all that great, but one thing I do remember, it wasn't fair how they treated him, and it was pretty ugly. I mean, honestly. Wow. So I just quit. I quit. It was during finals week. I left 18 graduate units on the table at Talbot and walked away. I said, Lord, you can have the church. I'm still thankful I'm a Christian, but this is not a business I'm going to get into. If this is the way godly, caring pastor people are treated, I've had enough. I've seen enough. And I heard a guy say one time, if you can be happy doing anything else, don't go into ministry. And at that point in my life, I certainly believed I would be happy doing anything else. But the thing that I felt was probably a pretty good option was marketing. And I had a friend who owned an agency. He was very kind to me. We went to work together, or he hired me for his firm. He vested in me. And then after about a year or so, he said to me, what do you do after work? And I said, well, I go up to, the church I was attending at that point, and I was working with some of the young people at that church. And I go up to the church and I put together some programs for these kids that I work with. And he said, do they pay you for that? And I said, no, they don't pay me anything. And he said, he's a very wise Christian man. He said, now, if you worked for them, would you come here to the marketing agency and work for me after hours for free? And I laughed and I said, probably not. And he said, Tom, then what are you doing here? And I still get emotional reflecting on that conversation. I was crying, he was crying, and the Lord kind of called me. I was recalled, and he told me, I know the church is full of people that are not Christ-like, but you're not serving them, you're serving me. So get your butt back in the game. And I did. So that's how I got back on the path to vocational ministry.
That's such a crazy story. You left 18 units on the table.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the professors, it was just a few years ago, they asked me to speak at Talbot and for one of their events, and one of the professors that I just didn't show up. I just quit and I walked away. Those units today would be extremely valuable. And I had A's and B's in all of those classes if I just take the final. But one of the professors, Dr. Robert Sousey, he was my church. It was the theology of the church class. And he was actually, when I spoke, he was sitting in the front row, and I recognized him. He was much older, obviously. And I recognized him. It was last year. He was a professor at Talbot. And so right in the middle of my talk, I just joked. I said, hey, I was wondering if I take that final now. And I don't even know if he got the joke, but anyway, it was, it was a stupid thing to do.
I don't know. I'm not sure it was. But let me ask this. You mentioned, even as a kid, some people saying you ought to look into ministry, and even this business guy you were working for. Is it just me, or I don't see that happening that much anymore? I don't, or are we just missing it? I don't see that many older Christian leaders going up to young people and saying, hey, you need to look into ministry. There's a call on your life. And thinking of a businessman saying, get your butt back in the game.
Yeah.
But it seems to me we really need a lot more of that. But have we lost that?
I don't know if we've lost it. I think, God tends to get his way. I remember even having conversation with the Lord at that point, and I said, and you and I may have talked about this in the past, I said to the Lord at that time, okay, if I'm going to get back into this ministry, vocational ministry, get back on that path, then I'm not going to care what people think about me. Because my dad, being the shepherd that he was, he did have a heart that was broken over their behavior and how they treated him. And so I told the Lord, and I don't recommend this as a strategy ever in terms of negotiating with God. And whenever we try, it's like God says, okay, but he's going to get his way anyway. God, I believe, JD, then and now, God will use somebody somehow, somewhere to get his point across. And he happened to use a Jim in my life as a business individual and business leader. He was great. I mean, I'm very thankful. And not only that, But at his marketing agency, I learned, and I can see God's hand. I'm not sure that my hardened heart didn't make it more difficult to get where God wanted me to be. But I would say I learned a lot that year in terms of marketing products. And the gospel is not something that, we just market like we do a car, but the gospel is something that we are called to represent well. It's almost like conduct yourselves, as Paul writes, conduct yourselves no matter what happens. I think it's Philippians chapter 1. No matter what happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel. And so as we live our lives, we are very careful to market the gospel by the way we reflect it in our daily lives. And my team, we've talked about who we follow, and my college football team is the UCLA team. They lost on the weekend, and so that was kind of sad. But anyway,
they're God's team too. So
yes, thank you. But anyway, I hope. But every coach, and I was just talking to my son a couple of days ago, every coach's job is to put the best product on the field because people are watching the game. And that's the point. It's there for the enjoyment of the team and the enjoyment of the fans. And I liken that to the gospel. It's my job as a pastor for all these years to help people become a better representation of Christ. Paul, if you wrote the book of Hebrews, which you probably, anyway, that's a whole nother Oprah. But he, in the book of Hebrews chapter 12, says, without holiness, no one will see the Lord. And so if we have the gospel, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel, because without the way you conduct your lives in a holy manner, nobody sees Christ. Well, then as a pastor, I want to put the best product on the field. I want to grow these people up because the gospel is worthy of our Christian life disciplines to reflect Jesus. And, the oikos principle talks about the front row, and that 8 to 15 people got as supernaturally and strategically placed in the front row of your life. They got the best seats in the house. They've been given tickets to the best seats in the house. They can hear what you say and watch how you live better than anyone. And 95% of the people who give their hearts to Christ primarily because of a relationship with someone in that front row, those 8 to 15 people. And so, man, we're coaching people up all the time, trying to put the best product on the field so that people will see the Lord, so that they live their lives in a manner worthy of the gospel. Because the gospel, bottom line is, that's all that matters anymore. Lost people need to become saved people, and that's what we want to see happen. I get on a soapbox, bro, so you're going to have to slow me down.
Preach it.
Just get me going.
So back to your story. You got back in the game, and what did that look like?
Well, I became a youth pastor. In fact, right after that, I got a call from a guy who's looking for a youth pastor who knew my dad. And so he said, hey, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. And then I called my dad and I said, what does this guy want? And he said, well, it's a job interview. And I said, I'm not sure I want a job right now because I don't know what I'm doing. And my dad said, well, go, it's just good experience. The interview is a good experience. And so this guy interviewed me for about a half hour and said, when can you start? And I said, are you offering me a job right now? And he said, yeah. And I said, you just met me. And he said, well, you're Frank Mercer's son, right? And I said, yeah. He said, that's all I need to know. And I said, okay. I don't know why I said okay, but that's the ministry where I learned the oikos principle. And at a seminar I attended with my senior pastor. And so the Lord called us there, and we had a very fruitful ministry there in youth ministry, I would say primarily because of the application of the oikos principle, but Anyway, that's another question you might ask at some point. But 7.5 years as the youth pastor there. And then I moved up to the high desert, and I spent 38 years as a senior pastor at the High Desert Church.
How did you get up there?
Well, you know Jack Hamilton, right?
Right.
Jack is the consummate networker. He was the administrator of a Christian school. And
I should say everybody knows Jack Hamilton. He's the connector.
That's true. Well, I did. My dad led him to Christ, and that's how I knew Jack. And so we knew each other before either of us were in ministry. And so anyway, Jack calls me one day. I was in my office, my youth pastor office, and Jack knew I was looking for maybe to become a lead pastor at some point. And he said, there's a church up here, and one thing led to another. And so it was about a 4-month process, and I became the pastor at High Desert Baptist Church. And so Jack connected me with the leadership of the church, even though Jack did not attend that church. He did not attend High Desert Baptist Church. He attended the church where the school, he was the administrator of this school, this very Christian school. And about 9 months later, the church had about doubled in size. I mean, it was 100 people to begin with. So I was starting to think about an associate, and I asked Jack if he had any ideas, and he said, what about me?
Did he really?
Yeah. And I said,
wow.
I mean, what about you? I thought you enjoyed your leadership at the school. He said they did. He and Linda did, but he thought that he might like to jump into a local church pastoral role at some point. And so I said, done. I said, yeah, let's do it. And so Jack arranged for me to get my job at High Desert Baptist Church. Jack arranged for himself to get a job at High Desert Baptist Church. And you know the story of Jack because he's so unique. He's helped make connections for hundreds of people to be connected to the right church at the right time. And so he's quite he's a great friend. He became the XP, the executive pastor at the church. Now it's High Desert Church. He used to be and was founded as a Baptist church. And we were always very Baptistic. We just dropped the B word out of the name. And so he was the XP with me for 30 years. And then he stepped aside from that role. And now he's as you know, he's coaching and encouraging outside of that role, pastors all over the place.
He's still connecting it. How do you, and I know you had a team there, how do you keep a team together for 30 years?
Well, it's the same dynamic as keeping a church together for 30 years. You know, we just don't have arguments. There's no political infighting, no church splits. I mean, people come and go. It's not like everybody who attends loves it forever. But you've heard me say this in presentations I've made for Excel. A charismatic leader, a charismatic leader, and I don't mean that theologically as much as just somebody who's very personality and very attractive, very attractive personality and very gifted. Any gifted, charismatic leader can fill a room, but only a common mission can unite the people in it. And so we got a lot of gifted people all over the place that are filling rooms, and then it's fine. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. We had a lot of full rooms too, but the unity of the church depends on the fact that the congregation generally buys into and rallies around a common mission. And I think that when you have a team that buys into a common mission, when a sufficient number of people who attend both understand and participate in the common mission, then the church stays together. I have often said, because we transitioned out 18 months ago, I've said so often before that event and since, there should never be a succession of mission. If there's no succession of mission between leaders, then pastors are plug and play. We come and go. We walk into a ministry setting that was probably there before we arrived. And even if you're a church planner, the dynamics were there before you got there. They'll be there when you're gone. The mission should never change. So don't mess around with the Great Commission, or else you're going to have divided churches. Jesus gave us one thing to do between his advents. One. So there, like when Paul wrote the Corinthians and he said, I want you to be completely united in mind and thought, he wasn't talking about politics. He wasn't talking about theological issues, because we all have opinions. He was talking about the fact that we are all partners in the gospel. We have a common calling and a common mission. And that's framed by, Matthew 28, that singular thing Jesus told us to be about. And it's just amazing to me how many churches have so much going on and so many programs and so many emphases and so many things that they've adopted as part of their formal ministry that have nothing to do with the Great Commission. And with the Oikos movement, our tagline is helping people align life to the Great Commission. That's what we want to do. Your life, my life, that's the calling we've been given. We've been extended.
Well, I just really appreciate your focus. Just you're the guy that keeps pushing that. Let's get back to the main thing. The Oikos movement, you talked about transitioning 18 months ago. So what are you doing now?
Well, we have an organization. We have our own nonprofit status with the state of California. It's essentially right now, it's me and a great board of pastors and business leaders who believe in the Oikos principle, and we're available for coaching. We're available for training. You've been to or have seen many of our trainings on this idea. And if you go to oikosmovement.com, you can sign up. We'll send you content once in a while. I think every week it's either a blog post or an email.
Got one this morning.
Yeah, it's every Tuesday. Don't want to bother people. I know pastors are busy, but we just want to continue to drip and encourage guys to just sufficiently embed this idea into the fabric of a local church. The Oikos principle will absolutely refuse to allow a local church to become inward focused. It will not let you. And that's important over time, that the mission remains the main thing.
Oh my goodness, if you can stop from being inward focused in whatever organization you have, you'll just see amazing things. How's it been? 18 months after, what did you say, 38 years? How's the transition been for you personally?
It's been good. I got a great wife of 43 years, and JD, Cheryl, and we worked hard over the seasons of ministry to carve out a healthy relationship. It wasn't always easy, but I think we achieved a sufficient amount of balance between our family and our job, so that when the job kind of changes or the job goes away, there's still purpose in life. And of course, I still have a job. We're still, executive director of this group that still keeps us busy in terms of teaching and training. But, if it all went away, I think Cheryl and I and our 3 kids, they had great families, and we have 11 grandkids, and we really enjoy that side of life too.
You're just a hero to so many, a hero to me. You've done so well. Family's great. I mean, the only thing I have, questions about in your life is the fact you're a Dodger fan.
Yeah.
But that's probably just you're just smarter than me. But
JD, just conduct yourself in a manner worthy of the gospel, and you'll be a Dodger fan.
Oh, that is not what my grandmother said. So.
Who do the Angels get in the first round of the playoffs this year? That's what I want to know.
a fishing trip, a long vacation. I'm really,
Yeah.
honestly,
You brought it up, bro. You brought it up. I'm
it
sorry.
doesn't matter when this podcast airs either. It'll be the same answer.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Yes. Hey, give us a leadership tip or two, will you, Tom?
Well, yeah, I got a few, but I say that, everything I say, JD, Tom is an acquired taste. I'm not a big conference speaker kind of guy. HTC loved me for a long time. They got used to me and they recognized my sense of humor, my matter of factness. And sometimes I speak so confidently about some things that people might come away feeling like there's a level of arrogance there. Honestly, I'm just trying to get through every day without looking stupid. And so I have this great, grateful heart to God that he wants to use me at any level. And if there's anything I share, it's with great humility. And I could be wrong about so many things. I think
you're wrong there, Tom. You're very humble. Other than the Dodger thing, you are.
Yeah, thank you.
You come off as a guy that's not trying to prove anything. Pretty humble. So,
well, thank you for that. But anyway, all that to say, I offer this one to you as well, humbly. And James Clear is the guy that said it. And I don't even know his spiritual, where he is spiritually. He does not write as a Christian author, but so many of the principles that he proposes, kind of like Jim Collins, they just relate so well to faith and leadership and ministry. But one of the things he said that I love is that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And in church life, that is, you will never rise to the level of your vision. You will fall to the level of your structures. And everybody has, every evangelical church kind of has the same vision statement. We all want people to know Christ, to grow in Christ, to know God and make him known. There's all these different iterations, but we all essentially are about the same thing. That's our vision. Those are our goals. Why don't more churches realize their goals? Because, as James Clear puts it, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And that's why it's important, maybe, to understand the systems that allow, the structures that allow a vision to flourish. And you've got some churches that have an inward vision, and they've structured their church to facilitate it. They have an inward structure. And that church is successful, although it's not following the Great Commission. It's successful because its structure facilitates its vision. So many churches have an outward vision, but their structures are inward. And that's where you get a kind of it's a problem, because you'll fall to your systems and your structures, not rise to your goals. And the oikos movement is about that outward vision that you have, those outward vision goals that you have as a pastor for your church family. We would love to help you create systems that support your vision, because when you think about it, if your structures don't support your vision is worthless.
Wow. Can you give us just a quick example of a structure that pulls people inward?
Well, it's
naming any names.
Yeah, it's even how you conduct a weekend worship event. How you train. I was talking to a guy yesterday in Pennsylvania. This is true. Yesterday in Pennsylvania. He attends, I think, the 11th largest church in Pennsylvania, came back from a day of, came back from church on Sunday, and the emphasis was it's important to share Christ with your friends. And that's a goal. That's a vision. Share Christ with your friends. He came home and he told his dad, Dad, they told me that I need to share Christ with my friends. I think the kid's a freshman in high school. And it was very compelling, but they didn't tell me how. And they encouraged me to do something I really don't know what to do with. See, that's a perfect example of, rise to the level of your vision to share Christ with your friends. You fall to the level of your structures. How do you frame that up for a kid? And how do you frame that up for their parents? And you know where I would go if we had more time. The oikos principle provides us a structure. It provides us a system. And that's why it helps people get their head around what it means to share Jesus with people.
It's great stuff. And it's really helped not only our church, but me personally. So thanks, Tom. oikosmovement.com.
Yeah.
And how do you spell oikos?
Oikos.
Okay. oikosmovement.com.
Right.
Hey, Tom, thanks for being you. If you're an acquired taste, I paid for it. So
thank you.
I appreciate it.
You're a good friend, JD, and I love what you and Excel are about, and we appreciate you so much. Look forward to seeing you in a few months.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for being here, Tom. God bless.
Buddy. Yeah, you too.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.